After studying this module, you will be able to understand what is industrial economics. Specifically, you will learn about the theoretical foundation of industrial economics, the structure, conduct, performance paradigm, the link between game theory and industrial economics, some fundamental questions in industrial economics. Industrial economics, also popularly known as industrial organization, is concerned with working of market and industries, especially the way in which firms compete with each other. Industrial economics is considered a separate subject and is distinct from microeconomics because it emphasizes the study of firm strategies, price competition, product positioning, advertising, R&D, etc. It emphasizes on markets with competition among few firms. It is studied by students of economics, finance, marketing and strategy. Industrial economics has evolved from a niche area in economics to an independent discipline because it is the first economic discipline to incorporate developments in game theory during 1960s and 1970s. The analysis of imperfectly competitive markets is inherently important and interesting. In the next few sections, we will discuss the theoretical foundation of industrial economics, the structural conduct performance paradigm, game theory and industrial economics, and some fundamental questions that form the core of industrial economics. Now let us discuss about the theoretical foundation. Adam Smith was the first to understand the high price associated with monopolies in the wealth of nations in 1776. It was only in 1890 that formal models of monopoly and competition were developed with the publication of Alfred Marshall's Principle of Economics. Although perfect competition and monopoly provide the two extremes of market structure, most real markets have few firms, differentiated products and limited information available to producers and the consumers, that is a sort of asymmetric information. Chamberlain in 1933 and Robinson in 1933 developed some models of imperfect competition to explain these real world phenomena. Chamberlain's model of monopolistic competition filled the gap between perfect competition and monopoly and had elements of both these types of market structure. There are no barriers to entry. The market has a large number of competitors who sell differentiated products and each firm faces a downward sloping demand curve. The major drawback of the model was the lack of strategic interaction amongst the large number of competitors. Strategic interaction is critical in oligopoly, which is again imperfectly competitive market, where the action of one firm affects the behavior and profits of all other firms. Cournot in 1938 first proposed a static duopoly model, where two firms compete by simultaneously choosing output under oligopolistic interaction. Burton in 1883 criticized Cournot's assumption of competition in output and developed a static duopoly model where the firms choose price simultaneously. Edgeworth in 1897 felt that in Cournot's model the equilibrium is indeterminate regardless of whether the products are substitutes or complements. Chamberlain in 1929 and Hotelling in 1929 supported Cournot's model and showed that neither the assumption of quantities nor prices as strategic variables were correct in the absolute sense. The qualitative nature of the predictions of the Cournot model were found to be robust to the introduction of product differentiation. Hotelling in 1929, Chamberlain in 1933 and Robinson again in 1933 introduced the concept of product differentiation. Hotling's linear model introduces different preferences in consumers and provides the foundation for location theory by assuming that consumers buy at most one unit of a product. In 1934, Steckelberg suggested a sequential timing in the firm's decisions and thus incorporated the idea of commitment. The structure, conduct, performance paradigm. The field of industrial economics took shape in 1930 following the work of Edward Mason in 1939. The structure, conduct, performance or the SCP paradigm is result of this work. Mason wanted to develop a model that would allow an assessment of the economic performance of the real world market. He used the theory and institutional framework in a way that was applicable to real markets. This led to the development of a taxonomy of fundamental market attributes under the general categories of basic conditions, structure, conduct and performance. You can see this in figure 1. Demand and supply conditions in the market are referred to as the basic conditions. The supply side includes raw materials, nature of technology, business attitude and unionization. While the demand side includes price elasticity, substitutes and cyclical and seasonal nature of demand. Market structure describes characteristics of the market that are different from perfect competition. These include the number of sellers and buyers, the degree of entry and exit barriers, product differentiation, the level of integration in the firm and cost structures. Market conduct focuses on the key choice variables of firms including price, product, advertising, research and innovation and legal tactics. It is important in industrial economics to evaluate whether a firm performs well from society's point of view. The elements of market performance include productive and allocative efficiency, progress, full employment that is macroeconomic stability and equity. Equity means that which is fair and just. As a society, we would like firms to refrain from unfair business practices and behave in a socially responsible manner. The SCP paradigm shows that there is a link between market structure, conduct and performance. This is shown in figure 1. A causality runs from structure to conduct and performance. There is also some evidence of a reverse causality from conduct to structure. The SCP paradigm is favored by many scholars because of its empirical applicability. A number of studies were done that looked at the effect of market structure and conduct on industry performance. Many of these studies found positive correlation between concentration and industry profits, which was seen as a sign of efficiency. The results of these studies were used as evidence to enforce antitrust laws in the United States of America in the 1950s and 1960s. In the 1960s, some economists began to question the theory and empirical evidence in support of the SCP paradigm. The superior efficiency hypothesis by Dempsey in 1973 said that markets are dynamic and successful firms with lower cost or better products will earn higher profits and gain a larger share of the market. This will lead to higher concentration and higher profits in industries. So a positive correlation exists between concentration and profits and is because of superior efficiency of larger corporations. Thus, the causality runs from performance to structure and not from structure to performance as highlighted by the SCP paradigm. These differing hypotheses led to different policy recommendations. The SCP paradigm favored deconcentration policies and the superior efficiency hypothesis did not. In fact, it was against the idea of penalizing successful monopoly firms so that they have enough incentive to innovate and produce more monopoly power, but at the same time still benefit the society. Now let us discuss about game theory and industrial economics. A very important contribution to industrial economics has come from the application of game theory. Game theory is essential for theoretical research in industrial economics because it shows how rational players will behave in a strategic setting, and it provides tools that allow realistic modeling assumptions about the rules of the game, that is market conditions, laws, etc. Game theory developed into an important modeling tool used in oligopoly theory. Von Neumann and Morgenstern in 1944 and Nash in 1950 and then in 1951 pioneered the development of game theory. In 1950, John Nash discovered the solution to non-cooperative games, which was termed as Nash equilibrium. The Nash equilibrium identifies the actions that rational players will follow to maximize payoffs. This means that each player must choose the best response to the actions of all other players in the game. Nash equilibrium is reached when all players behave optimally. Once the equilibrium has been attained, the players cannot improve their payoffs by altering their behavior. The Kurna and Bertrand models mentioned earlier represented a Nash equilibrium to an oligopoly game that has a different set of characteristics. In the Kurna model, there are two firms producing a homogeneous product, for example spring water, and they compete by simultaneously choosing the output. In the Bertrand model, the firms compete by setting price instead of output. These models show how a simple change in the rules of the game affects the Nash equilibrium. In the Bertrand model, the price is the perfectly competitive price, and in the Kurna model, it lies between the monopoly and competitive prices. Refinements of the Nash equilibrium solution, like Selton's subgame perfect equilibrium given in 1965 and perfect equilibrium in 1975, Hassani's Bayesian Nash equilibrium in 1967-68, or Krebs and Wilson's sequential equilibrium given in 1982 were essential for analyzing the indeterminacy of prices under oligopoly. Then Friedman in 1971, Oman and Shapley in 1976, Rubinstein in 1979 and Green and Potter in 1984 developed the theory of repeated games, which enabled the study of mechanisms allowing to sustain non-cooperative collusion. Now we can discuss about some fundamental questions in industrial economics. The first question is there a market power? This is a crucial question because if there is no market power, there would be no need to study industrial economics. Over the years, many studies have tried to measure the extent of market power. If we assume that costs are proportional to output, we can get a good estimate of market power from data on prices, output and profit rates. Profit rate is the difference between price and unit cost divided by the unit cost. If PR is equal to profit rate, P is the price and C is the unit cost, PR is equal to P minus C divided by C. Some economists who subscribe to the Chicago school of thought believe that the extent of market power is never significant. This is based on the idea that under conditions of free entry into an industry, if a firm charges a price higher than cost and earn profit, a new firm will find it profitable to enter the market and existing firm's market power will not continue. Other economists believe that market power exists and is very significant in some industries. The second question is, how do firms acquire and retain market power? Market power usually means high profits. So, for any firm that is interested in maximizing its value, it is important to create and maintain market power. So how do firms acquire market power? One way is through legal protection from competition. Prior to the 1980s, the automobile industry in India was dominated by two brands of cars. They were the Ambassador and the Fiat. The companies making these brands, Hindustan Motors was producing Ambassador and the Premier Automobiles Limited was producing Fiat, enjoyed the legal protection as no other car manufacturer was allowed to enter this market. These companies could raise their prices without attracting any competition. Firm strategy may also play an important role in establishing market power. Once companies acquire market power, they also need to maintain it. Many protected industries get deregulated just like the automobile industry in India. There are many strategies that companies can adopt to maintain their market power, like aggressive price wars and others that establish a reputation for being tough. The third important question is, what does market power imply? Market power implies higher profits and greater firm value for the firm. From society's point of view, the implications include a transfer from consumer to firms as a consequence of higher price. This is known as transfer effect. In addition, a higher price also implies inefficient allocation of resources. For example, in the airline industry, high airfares mean that there are customers who are unable to buy tickets when the cost of taking them as passengers may be very low for the airline. The value they derive from flying is higher than the cost of flying. The resulting loss from tickets remaining unsold is the allocative inefficiency implied by market power. Market power also implies another type of inefficiency, which is productive inefficiency. This arises from the belief that firms with greater market power have less incentive to be efficient in terms of cost. In addition, when market power is artificially maintained by government intervention, another type of inefficiency is created. This is known as rent seeking. This refers to the unproductive resources spent by firms to influence policy in their own favor. Although the preceding discussion puts forth the view that market power is bad for society, J. Schumpeter once said the following in support of market power. He says, as soon as we go into details and inquire into the individual items in which progress was most conspicuous, the trade does not do to the doors of those firms that work under conditions of comparatively free competition, but precisely to the doors of the large concerns. This view is subscribed to by the Austrian school, which believes that market power exists and is essential for technical progress to take place. The fourth important question is, what is the link between public policy and market power? The main role for public policy in industrial economics is to avoid the negative consequences of market power. Public policy for this purpose can take the form of regulation and competition policy. Regulation refers to the situation where a firm with monopoly or close to monopoly powers is overseen by a regulator. Competition policies are meant to promote competition or competitive practices in industries. In addition, some countries have industrial policies that are meant to strengthen the market position of a firm or industry, especially with respect to foreign firms. Now, let us summarize what we have learned from this module. Industrial economics, also popularly known as industrial organization, is concerned with the working of markets and industries, especially the way in which firms compete with each other. Although Perfect competition and monopoly provide the two extremes of the market structure. Most real markets have few firms, differentiated products, and limited information available to producers and consumers. Chamberlain in 1933 and Robinson also in 1933 developed models of imperfect competition to explain these real-world phenomena. Cournot in 1838 was the first to propose a static duopoly model where two firms compete by simultaneously choosing output under oligopolistic interaction. Bertrand in 1883 criticized Cournot's assumption of competition in output and developed a static duopoly model where the firms choose price simultaneously. Hotelling in 1929, Chamberlain in 1933 and Robinson in 1933 introduced the concept of product differentiation. The structure conduct performance or the SCP paradigm is a result of the work done by Edward Mason in 1939. Mason wanted to develop a model that would allow an assessment of the economic performance of real world markets. The SCP paradigm shows that there is a link between market structure, conduct and performance. A very important contribution to industrial economics has come from the application of game theory. Game theory is essential for theoretical research in industrial economics because it shows how rational players will behave in a strategic setting, and it provides tools that allow realistic modeling assumptions about the rules of the game, that is market conditions, laws, etc. In 1950, John Nash discovered the solution to non-cooperative games, which was termed as the Nash equilibrium. The Nash equilibrium identifies the actions and rational players will follow to maximize the payoffs. This means that each player must choose the best response to the actions of all other players in the game. Nash equilibrium is reached when all players behave optimally. Once this equilibrium has been attained, the players cannot improve their payoffs by altering their behavior. Some fundamental questions that industrial economics answers are: is there market power? How do firms acquire and retain this market power? What does market power imply? And what is the link between public policy and the market power?